contains sustainable tourism, heritage tourism, community participation, residents' perception, and urban sustainability. He has published more than 120 articles in referee journals, including high-impact journals such as Tourism Management, Journal of Travel Research, Journal of Sustainable Tourism, International Journal of Contemporary Research Management, Journal of Cleaner Production, and the International Journal of Tourism, among others. Associate Professor Mostafa is an editorial board member of more than 20 reputable tourism and hospitality journals, and he serves as associate editor for the Journal of Hospitality and Tourism Management, Journal of Hospitality and Tourism Technology, and Journal of Hospitality and Tourism Insights, as well as the regional editor in Asia for the Service Industries Journal and International Journal of Tourism Policy. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Associate Professor Mostafa.
Thank you very much, Dr. Joseph, for a kind introduction. Good evening, everyone. Hope you can hear me clearly. And now let me share, check if you can see my screen. Yeah, hopefully my PowerPoint is visible.
Yes.
Okay. Thanks for this opportunity to discuss about theoretical and conceptual framework. And I believe this concept is important concept, and at the same time is a bit confusing for a researcher, especially postgraduate student and early career researcher. I will try to discuss about this topic in this short period that we have, and of course I will try to make it short to have more time for Q&A if you have any question regarding this important concept and my presentation. Okay, the topic is about theoretical and conceptual framework. But first, we need to know about theory. Yeah, what's the meaning of theory? The meaning of theory. Sorry, the meaning of theory come from two different perspectives. One, actually, theory come from ancient Greek word theor, that which refer to spectator or who travel to see things and to explore things. So from this perspective, theory is a side or view that we have for phenomena. And also they come from theorem. Theorem actually refer to principle, inference, logic, supposition, pre-assumption, and actually the proposition. So refer to and try to explain what happened and what's relationship between social phenomena, right? What's the logic behind things, right? So if we look at these two theories, something that we need to have a view, right? We need to have a view to understand things, to understand phenomena. There are different definitions for theory. I try to have some of this definition here. For example, based on Stevenson, theory is to describe, to explain, predict, and the controlling phenomena. So based on this definition, theory try to, if we continue with the next one from Khan and Hefni, theory try to explain, try to describe, and try to predict reality in a sequential order. When we say sequential order means how we can justify relationship between A and B, how we can describe and explain relationship between two social phenomena, relationship between attitude and behavioral intention. So how attitude can predict behavioral intention. So this is something that refer to theory, the meaning of theory. Again, theory is a set of logical statements that how some certain phenomena and construct, some social phenomena can be related in a set of boundaries, right, and assumption. When we talk about attitude and behavior, you know, we have a lot of behavioral theories. Later, I will explain a few. So when we look at behavioral theories, relationship between some social phenomena, some concept, and the other concept can be explained by those behavioral theories. If we look at, for example, theory of planned behavior, we know there are three main concepts that drive behavior, behavioral intention, and behavior of people. So based on this theory, we know how attitude, subjective norm, and perceived control can predict our behavior, or at least behavioral intention, if not actual behavior. There are some debate around the actual behavior and behavioral intention on behavioral theories like theory of planned behavior. But this theory can explain logic behind this relationship and how this concept can be related. Also, sometimes we talk about boundaries and some assumption. For example, when we have generational theory and we look at behavior of different generation, so there are discussion that how behavior and how attitude of different generation, because of characteristic of those generation, can be different. How generation X behave differently with generation Y and generation Z, right? So these differences, these relationship, sometimes in some boundaries and assumption can be explained by theory. So theory explains underlying psychological, economic, and social dynamic behind the relationship between phenomena, right? And here we have one important word, that theory explain underlying psychological logic to justify selection of factors. When we want to justify relationship between or effect of some factor on other factor, effect of some construct and other construct, we need theory to understand the psychological or economic or social reason for this relationship, right? So these are some definition that refer to theory, and we can understand the meaning of theory from some of these definitions. There are many, but just here I included a few to understand what's originally the meaning of theory. When we want to talk about theoretical framework, so first we need to know about theory, right? So theory is not literature, right? So theory is not references that we have in our literature review. Sometimes I ask in different occasions, I ask a student, or if I'm examiner for some in some panel for examining some study. So when I ask what's the theory behind this conceptualization and this relationship and this concept, student answer, okay, they refer to some study in the literature. This study investigated this relationship, another study investigated this relationship. So this is theory to justify this relationship, to justify relationship between these two concepts. Actually, this is not, right? So literature or referring or reference or citing some previous study is not theory. Theory is something established concept, established theory need to explain psychological, economic, social reason behind something, behind social phenomena. Especially we talk about relationship between social phenomena. So theory is not references, theory is not literature, theory is not variable or construct that we have, right? Theory is not diagram that we can describe some concept together. Also, theory is not hypothesis, right? Dr. Lim, I attended the Dr. Lim workshop and benefited a lot, learned a lot from his explanation about case study. He mentioned case study can be applied for different methods, but he focused more on qualitative, from qualitative angle. I also, of course, theoretical and conceptual framework is for both qualitative and quantitative method, but I focus more on quantitative because I believe the role of the theoretical framework and theory is much more important when we do quantitative research, because quantitative research apply deductive approach. So from a deductive ground, we apply quantitative and we do quantitative research. But most of qualitative studies are inductive. So in inductive research, we start from data and we move from data to develop theory. But in quantitative research and deductive approach, we start from theory. So the role of theory and theoretical framework is very critical and important. So my focus is more on quantitative research. So the concept that I use and the words that I use mostly refer to quantitative research. For example, hypothesis, right? Hypothesis only be used in quantitative research. Qualitative research, we don't use hypothesis. We have proposition in qualitative research. But when we come to hypothesis, hypothesis is a testable proposition. When we say testable, means we need to have something to test those propositions. And testing is not possible in qualitative research. So hypothesis, but hypothesis is not theory, right? Hypothesis is something that should be supported by theory. We need theory to support hypothesis, but hypothesis is not theory. Predictions and predictors are not theory. They are some concept that we can identify based on theory, but they are not theory, right? So this is something that they are not. Before I explain what is, and here is what is not actually theory. So all these all these items can be part of theory, can be component of theory, but they are not, they cannot represent the meaning of theory, right? Theory is like a blueprint, is a like blueprint that can explain how different concepts, how different elements, how different construct in our research can be linked. what's the justification for effect of concept A and concept B? What's the justification for relationship between community attachment and support for tourism development in a community? How we can justify this relationship? What's the reason for this relationship, right? Reason is explained by theory. So for community attachment, relationship between community attachment and support for tourism development in a destination by resident. For example, we apply social exchange theory. Social exchange theory, the concept of social, the component of social exchange theory, principles of social exchange theory can justify this relationship. Social exchange theory say, okay, if the benefit of some activities, if the benefit of something is more than cost, so we are willing to do exchange. We are willing to support some related activity. So if I have community attachment to this community and think benefit of tourism development in this community is more than cost of tourism development, so I'm willing to support tourism development, right? So this relationship is justified based on social exchange theory. So social exchange theory is a theory here. Social exchange theory is a blueprint, but in general, theory is a blueprint to explain how these concepts can be related and can be linked, right? Here there are some examples of theories. So these are very dominant and important theory in different disciplines in social science, and you might be familiar with this theory. For example, here we have social exchange theory. I explained before about this theory. Social exchange theory, one of the dominant theory, especially if you apply, if you work on tourism development in destination and focus on resident of destination and tourism development from the perspective of residents. Social exchange theory, one of the dominant theory. Social exchange theory can explain how residents support tourism development and what are the factors that can influence support for tourism development, right? A theory of planned behavior is another theory that you heard a lot about. This theory. It's a very mature theory. At the moment, some journals no more accept the theory of planned behavior because believe that this theory was developed 1970s, and many studies so far have applied this theory. But now some editors believe this theory no more can explain behavior of human beings, especially in some area like tourism. There are many conflicting results with this theory, so they believe theory of planned behavior is not good to explain and justify behavior of people. But this is one of the mature and established theory, and you can see many studies that apply this. And also there are a few extended version of this theory. So you can see TPB 1, 2, so extension of theory of planned behavior. Technology acceptance model. If you are working on technology, adoption of technology in education, adoption of technology in hospitality, adoption of technology in other area. So probably you heard a lot about technology acceptance model, how technology can be accepted by user, by consumer, and based on technology acceptance model, we have two main factors: perceived usefulness and perceived ease of use that can explain level of acceptance of technology. Another theory that has been used a lot in technology adoption and technology acceptance is unified theory of acceptance and use of technology called UTAT. And also for this UTAT, we have also UTAT2. This theory has been developed in 2003 by Professor Venkatesh. And he combined 8 different theories, like theory of planned behavior, theory of reason action, technology acceptance model, and a few more theories to develop this theory. So 8 theories have been combined to establish this unified theory, right? UTAT. And this theory has been used in many studies, but in 2012, he and his colleague actually developed another version of this theory called UTAT2, and add a few more factors to this original version of UTAT. And UTAT2 also was introduced to technology adoption and technology acceptance area, and also stakeholder theory. You heard a lot about stakeholder theory that identify the role of different stakeholders in our social activity. So this is some examples, but we have thousands of theories. So in different areas, you can find many theories that can be related to different disciplines. And one common things in all theories that refer to definition of theory is theories are able to explain and justify relationship between social phenomena and concept. But here in this 5 examples that we have, we can observe 2 types of theories. We have some theories like social exchange theory and stakeholder theory. Those theories, or another theory just in behavioral science, is cognitive affective cognitive theory, or some similar theories like value attitude behavior theory under behavioral science. Those theories, you cannot find any specific concept that link to these theories. But these theories have some principles, have some main concept and components that can explain relationship between social phenomena, but not specific variable or factors. Social exchange theory, as I explained, okay, say if benefit of something, some activity is more than cost, so you are willing, or resident or consumer are willing to do something, to purchase a product, to support development in community, right? So this is main concept for social exchange theory. Actually, also there are other meaning and definition of social exchange theory that introduce 6 rules like reciprocity, altruism, status consistency, or rationality. So these rules drive and can justify relationship between social concepts, right? For example, for rationality, if I have economic gain from tourism development, so based on this rationality rule, when we get benefit from tourism development, So why not support tourism? So I'm willing to support tourism development in community. So relationship and effect of economic gain on support for tourism development can be justified based on rationality rule under this new definition of social exchange theory, right? We adopt this for resident perception. Actually, the dominant concept and traditional concept is the exchange between benefit and cost that I mentioned. But in 2015, we extracted this new concept of new definition, new understanding of social exchange theory that refer to interpersonal exchange instead of exchange between different groups from marketing discipline. And we brought to tourism development, and we published a paper in 2015 in tourism management perspective. And in this paper, we explain a revised understanding or revised framework for social exchange theory based on these 6 rules. So this social exchange theory, either based on traditional definition or based on these 6 rules, create a blueprint for us to, and give a tool to us to justify relationship between social concepts, right? But also we have some theory like theory of planned behavior, theory technology acceptance model, right? Or another theory that we use in our study about community participation is motivation, opportunity, ability theory or model, right? In this type of theories or model, we have very structured theories. Structured theories means you have specific concept, specific variables that influence some other variables, right? For example, in theory of planned behavior, you have attitude, subjective norm, and perceived control that influence behavioral intention. Or technology acceptance model, you have perceived usefulness and ease of use that influence acceptance or adoption of technology. So you have specific factors that influence your dependent variable and influence another concept, behavioral intention, for example, right? So you don't have flexibility to identify other factors. So you can see this group of theories, like the theory of planned behavior, can be called a structured theory. A structured theories, you have specific factors that influence on some other factors, right? You cannot change those factors. You cannot add something else based on theory of planned behavior, right? But some theories are unstructured theory, like social exchange theory, stakeholder theory, cognitive, affective, cognitive theory, value, attitude, behavior theory, and many other theories. So in this type of theory, you know, attitude influence influence attitude, and attitude influence behavior. But value can be different types of values. So you don't have specific value and specific factors. So these type of theories you can use to justify your study, and the different factors, different concepts can be identified under different layers of this theory. Different factors can be justified relationship based on definition and concept of social exchange theory or stakeholder theory. So we have these 2 types of theories. That theories, I believe, can be categorized under one of these groups. But what is theoretical framework? Because the topic of today is about theoretical framework. Theoretical framework is the theory or theories that you use in your study. What theory you use to support your hypothesis, to justify relationship between concepts, what theory you use. So this is your theoretical framework. So theoretical framework is used, applied to justify conceptual framework. So the theoretical framework is one or more than one theory that already established and used as the umbrella for your research, used to justify relationship between social phenomena and social concepts or factors or variables in your study. So theoretical framework come from the theory or theories that you apply to justify your research and should be established in previous study. So you need established theories to justify your research. So this is the meaning of theoretical framework. So theoretical framework come from theory. And when you say, this is my theoretical framework, you need to explain this theoretical framework is combination of social exchange theory and stakeholder theory. And this is the reason for this combination. There are these 10 theories that I can be linked to my study, but I selected these 2 theories to support my study. This is the reason for selecting these 2 theories. And this is definition of these theories. This is the evolution, this theory invented by this person, and this is the changing in this story, definition of this story, and now this is the definition, component, and the principles of this story, and I decided to apply this story because of this reason in my study. So theoretical framework come from an established theory or more than one theory if you need, right? But conceptual framework, you have some concept in your study, right? You develop a model in your study for relationship between attitude, economic gain, subjective norm, habit, and some more factors, right? You believe this factor influence behavioral intentions. So you adopt those concepts in your study that can be justified as predictor of behavioral intention. Relationship between those concepts is your conceptual framework. So conceptual framework come from your word, but this conceptual framework should be supported by your theoretical framework and should be supported by theory. Okay, if you have a few factors that influence behavioral intention, you need to explain. Attitude, subjective norm, and perceived control can be explained using theory of planned behavior, but perceived usefulness and ease of use can be justified based on technology acceptance model. And these 2 more factors can be justified based on social exchange theory. So your theoretical framework is theory of planned behavior, technology acceptance model, and social exchange theory. But your conceptual framework is the relationship between concepts. So conceptual framework is based on your problem statement and your research question. So you have to develop your conceptual framework. You have to adopt concept for your study based on your research questions. But justification for relationship between those concepts come from your theoretical framework, right? So here again explain that conceptual framework linked to your problem statement and linked to your research question. and you can identify different variables linked based on your research question. But how you can justify logic for relationship between those concept and variable based on your theoretical framework and based on theory or theories that you apply in your study. So theoretical framework come from theory, right? This is theory. So theoretical framework come from theory, can establish theory. So these two are connected. And you can get some concept. You can get some concept from theory, right? And based on your research question, develop your conceptual framework. But your conceptual framework supported by theoretical framework, right? So your theoretical framework and theory come first, and then based on your research question, you can identify those concepts, you can justify those concepts and relationship between concept based on theory and based on theoretical framework, and establish your conceptual framework, right? So for both qualitative and quantitative research, the role of theory and the role of theoretical framework is very important, but especially, as I explained, for quantitative research, the role of the theoretical framework is much more critical and important, because quantitative research starts from theory. Sometimes we talk about generalization. I don't want to go through generalization concept, but generalization actually doesn't come only from your data. Generalization also comes from your conceptualization of a study, especially in social science, how you can conceptualize your study and relationship between social phenomena based on theory. So this can help you at the end, you generalize your result. Because generalization of population is very difficult in quantitative, in social science study. Even in quantitative study, you conduct a research on international tourists, right? International tourists come to Malaysia, but you collect your data only from one in certain period of time from one or two destinations, not all destinations in Malaysia. So it's not possible to collect data from all destinations and all international tourists that come to Malaysia. Very difficult even to be representative, very difficult to be representative. So in quantitative research, also most of time we collect our data using non-probability sampling. So we cannot apply probability sampling. Actually, it's not possible in most of cases, in most of studies. In very, very few studies, we are able to collect the sample using probability sampling, but most of cases in non-probability sampling. So how we can generalize the result using non-probability sampling, using purposive sampling, right? So it's not possible if only we rely on statistic and actually the representativeness of population. What we do, it's by support of theory, we can strengthen our ground to generalize the result. So generalization based on theory sometimes is the objective of quantitative research, and generalization refer to theoretical background, not refer to population, right? So theory is very critical. Actually, quantitative research in social science must be theory driven, not data driven. So in quantitative research, so this is the reason I don't agree in quantitative research in social science. We build our research based on positivism paradigm. I don't believe on this. Positivism paradigm is for natural science, physics, and pure science. that work with very objective concept and measure very objective concept. When we come to social science, our paradigm, even when we apply quantitative research, the realism is not positivism, because in realism paradigm, we are working with subjective concept. Theory is very important. That is not the case in science disciplines. So, but in social science, especially quantitative, is very, very theory driven. And we need theoretical framework, and we need the theory to support our study and relationship. So just simply, we cannot say, okay, because data support, there is a relationship between attitude and behavior. It's wrong. First, we need to support this relationship. We need to justify this relationship based on theory. Then based on data, we can confirm. We can test, we can confirm. But maybe somebody asks, okay, if this is the case, always we do theory testing. No, we combine different theory and we do theory development. I show you the work of Venkatesh, 2003. He combined 8 different theories to develop a new theory, a theory that has been applied after he published his work. If you go to Google Scholar, you can see citation to this work is more than 40,000. So means more than 40,000 work in the world refer to this study and apply this new theory that developed based on quantitative research. So quantitative research, the role of theory and theoretical framework is very critical, but theoretical framework is different with conceptual framework. Conceptual framework come from your study, but theoretical framework come from established theory. Also in qualitative, we can use theory, of course. We can have theory as umbrella, but the role of theory in qualitative, the role of theoretical framework in qualitative research is totally different. In qualitative research, we don't build our study based on theory. We can use theory as a guideline, but in quantitative, we have to build our research and conceptualize our research based on established theory. This is some example from my publication. Just I go through and finish. I think I know I have 5 minutes. This is one of the paper that we published 2017 in tourism management. In this paper, we talk about community and discuss community participation in World Heritage Site, right? In this story, in this study, we apply motivation, opportunity, ability model or theory, MOA model. This model explains decision-making can happen based on 3 main factors, 3 main components: motivation, opportunity, and ability. So if we fulfill these 3 main components, decision-making can happen, or support for something can happen. Here, community participation can happen. So this is our theoretical framework, right? Based on this theoretical framework, we develop 18 hypotheses, I think, right? And we develop this model. Under motivation, we have positive perception toward tourism development, negative perception, and interest factors. So these 3 factors are under motivation. So the relationship between these 3 factors and participation, here we have 3 hypotheses, that these 3 hypotheses should be supported by MOA. So all hypotheses come together here and establish our conceptual framework. So our conceptual framework, it's the concept and relationship between concept that can also be called the hypothesis. Relationship between concept and hypothesis together establish this conceptual framework. But justification for those hypotheses and to conceptualize this relationship come from this MOA model and this MOA theory. So theoretical framework is MOA, but this is conceptual framework of our study. This is another paper that we discuss about effect of knowledge, perceived power, and motivation on resident perception toward tourism development. again in World Heritage Site. In this paper, we apply Weber theory of the substantive and formal rationality. In this theory, Weber explained about two types of rationality, right? Formal and substantive. Substantive rationality refer to some non-financial factors, and formal rationality refer to financial factors. So we apply this theory to justify relationship between motivation, perceived power, knowledge, and economic gain on perception, and also support for tourism development. So this is all conceptual framework. So conceptual framework is established based on hypotheses. But what's the theoretical framework is Weber theory, right? Weber theory of substantive and formal rationality. So this theory can justify and can explain all relationship between this factor. All your relationship and your hypotheses have to be supported by theory and your theoretical framework. So if you have theory A, if you have Weber theory, you need to explain why H1, hypothesis 1, can be supported by Weber theory, why H2 can be supported by Weber theory. So here you can see for each hypothesis, we try to explain this relationship and lead to this hypothesis and conceptual framework. This is another paper. In this paper, we apply two theories, right? Social exchange theory and Weber theory. And by application of this theory, because why? Because in this paper, we plan to assess the mediation role of perception. So one layer, we apply Weber theory to explain relationship between predictors and perception. But another layer, we apply social exchange theory to explain relationship between perception and support for tourism development. And social exchange theory alone cannot justify all this relationship. We discuss here why this cannot justify. So we apply two theories to, actually here we tested mediation role of this, mediation role of resident perception. And we published a paper last year about assessment of hypothesizing mediation. And in that paper, we explained there are two methods to develop hypotheses for mediator. It's a transmittal approach and segmentation approach. But in these two approaches, we explained role of theory is critical, and role of theory can explain these two approaches. For example, for transmittal approach, if we have sequential theories like value, attitude, behavior theory, so theory has three layers, we can justify the role of mediation based on this theory. So we need to apply transmittal theory. But if we apply segmentation approach, we don't have this type of sequential theory. We have theory to support first layer, relationship between predictors and mediator. And also we have another theory to justify relationship between mediator and a dependent variable or last layer. So we have to apply two theory. So even for mediation hypothesis, it's must to apply theory. And without application of theory, it's not possible to develop hypothesis in quantitative research. Here you can see we apply two theory to justify this mediation effect and relationship between this variable. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof, for the very insightful workshop on the difference between conceptual framework and theoretical framework. So at this point, we have a lot of questions from our attendees tonight, this evening. So I'll start with the first one, Prof. So it says here, I think it's already explained about this one, but I just going to highlight it again. Like, which of the two lead to each other? Which of the two frameworks lead to each other, and how do they work in tandem?
As I explained, the theoretical framework, of course, comes first. And the theoretical framework is supported for conceptual framework. So conceptual framework can be established based on theoretical framework. So, of course, theoretical framework comes first, and theory. And theoretical framework should be established based on theory that we apply.
Thank you, Prof. Just to confirm, this is one question here. Is sustainable development a theory?
I don't think. Sustainable development is a concept, is not a theory. So theory should clearly explain relationship between social phenomena. As I gave you some example, social exchange theory, cognitive conative theory. So based on cognitive conative theory, we can cognitive affective conative theory, we can explain relationship between these three layers in value, attitude, and behavior of people. So I don't think sustainable development is a paradigm, but is not is a paradigm in development, but is not the theory.
Yeah. So in connection to that, Prof, right? So maybe some of our attendees are also wondering, well, how can we know then if it's a theory that can form a theoretical framework, or if it's a concept or a paradigm?
Actually, the theory should be able to explain underlying psychological, social, and economic relationship between concepts. So if it's able to explain, and in previous study, you can see application of this concept to justify those relationship and to justify and to explain a relationship between concepts, so you can consider theory. But it's not difficult to realize, because when we go to the literature, you can see if it's an established theory, you should be able to see in many of the previous study that explain and discuss about this theory. So it's not difficult to understand.
Okay, so there's another question here. Let me just try to rephrase this. So given that we've developed, or if you're able to develop a conceptual framework in my study, for example, in her study or his study, could this conceptual framework be regarded or can be used as a theoretical framework in future studies that want to adopt it?
A conceptual framework only by testing in one study cannot be converted to a theory or model, right? Yes, if your study are repeated in many different contexts, and you can get similar result from different concepts, so you can generalize this model and you can consider this as a theory, but not only by testing some relationship in one study.
So if someone wants to study the relationship between socioeconomic status and academic achievement of a particular community, which theory would you recommend to be used?
I don't know. There are many thousands of theories in different disciplines. I'm not familiar with and I don't know about all theories. So you need to refer to your discipline, and you need to go to your field and see what's the theory that has been applied in your discipline, and see among of those theories, which theory can be most suitable for your study, so you can apply. So nobody can answer this question, because we have thousands of theories in different disciplines.
So in relation to that question, Prof, is there any criteria that the researchers use in selecting theories for their theoretical framework?
Actually, the best person to select the theory for research is you, for your research. So you have to be able, you should be able to explain a relationship between different concepts based on theory. If you are able to explain all relationship in your study based on one theory, two theories, so it means this theory can be suitable for your study. If you are not able, and try to tweak and try to try to justify, but very difficult way, so it means you need to reconsider, and you need to look back and look at other theories that can be apply and justify your study and relationship between concepts.
Okay. Next question, Prof. The participant want to ask, she want to share, he or she understands that researchers need to identify the theory that you're going to use during the proposal stage. Does it ever happen that results do not support the theory?
Yeah, of course. Many times in many study, we have some hypotheses that are not supported in our research. So it's not issue as long as we can justify. Sometimes insignificant results lead to development and advancement of specific theory. So when we don't have, okay, let me give you one example. One of my main area that I show you some paper is resident perception. So I publish a lot of paper about resident perception toward tourism development, right? When I work on this topic for years, sometime in 2017, 2018, I observed very conflicting results for effect of positive and negative perception on support. So I observed in some study, very strange, right? In some study, effect of negative perception on support for tourism development is positive. Means people that they have negative perception toward tourism development, they support tourism development. So this actually was the result of some study that published in good journal. So this provoked me, why this happened? What's the reason? So we use the data from 3 different cases, and we tried to reanalyze this relationship. What we found that this is because the relationship between negative perception and support for the tourism development is non-linear, is not linear relationship. Because of some reason, in some circumstances, people with negative perception have negative attitude toward for support for tourism development. But when this happens, when actually they reach to certain stage, after this stage, they try to communicate, they try to participate in the process of tourism development and support the tourism development, and try to correct this process and change something that they think is negative to positive by supporting development and by participating. So the relationship is non-linear and is not linear. So this is theory development. So theory until then explained that negative perception has negative effect on support for tourism development. But different results led us to investigate this issue and identify this non-linear relationship. So most of time, insignificant result has more contribution than significant result.
Thank you, Prof. That's really clear. One participant would like to clarify, can we say that the relationship between variables is a conceptual framework? And after attaching a theory with this framework, it becomes a theoretical framework?
Yeah, actually, the relationship between concept are our hypothesis, right? And our hypothesis in quantitative study together create conceptual framework. So conceptual framework established by hypothesis, but all hypotheses and the relationship should be supported by theory. So theory is something, an umbrella that's need to support hypothesis, but hypotheses together create conceptual framework.
Okay. And the last question for this workshop, do we need to mention both the theoretical framework and conceptual framework in our research paper or thesis?
Of course. You need to explain about theory and theoretical framework, and you need to mention that this is your theory and or theories, and what's the justification to apply those theory, and this is your hypothesis and conceptual framework, and your hypothesis how is supported by theory. You have to explain very clearly in your paper, in your thesis. Yes.
Okay. So thank you very much, Prof. So I'll hand you over to our MC.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So let's have a photo session first. Okay, everyone turn on your camera.